Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier, and thank you for stopping by. I am grateful for that. We're in the process of uploading Dr. Richard Sesibera's Mindspeak session about the East African community, and really thoroughly enjoyed that actually. Some deep insights I think I gained also. I wrote that piece, Geopolitical Musings, just gives me a chance to read that Don DeLillo quote. Everything is barely weeks, everything is days, we have minutes to live. And certainly the 21st century is a world hurtling at a dizzying velocity. My home thoughts return to my hometown of Mombasa and a photograph I took of the sunset when I was down there over Christmas. Political reflections. The 4th EU-Africa Summit is taking place today and tomorrow in Brussels. It's bringing together African and EU leaders as well as the leaders of the EU and African Union institutions under the theme Investing in People, Prosperity and Peace. Talk about the fact that in 2007 the EU and African heads of state adopted the joint Africa-EU strategy as the overarching political framework defining cooperation between the two continents based on a shared vision and common principles. Since the adoption of that joint Africa-EU strategy in Lisbon in 2007, both continents have undergone profound economic and political challenges. Africa has experienced impressive economic transformation, average GDP growth of 5.2% per annum over the period 2003 to 2011. In 2012, 8 out of the world's 10 fastest growing economies were African. Demographic trends have been equally remarkable. Africa has the youngest and fastest growing population in the world, and I call it binary because it's both a challenge and an opportunity. African integration has advanced. Europe, of course, is emerging from a recession. And so the theme of this conference is investing in people, prosperity and peace. Obviously President Zuma said he's not going, President Mugabe is not going either, and Bashir. But other than that, it seems they've had a full attendance. Meetings previously held in Cairo in 2000, Lisbon 2007 and Tripoli in 2010. And this is taking place in Brussels, talking about increased mobility between Africa and Europe is creating new opportunities for improved livelihoods in Africa through remittances. Between 2007 and 2012, global remittances to Africa grew by 34.5%, reached a total amount of $60.4 billion in 2012. The same year, for the first time, remittances became the largest external financial source to Africa, ahead of FDI and official development assistance, with 35% of global remittances to Africa originating in the EU1. That's interesting, isn't it? So it shows you, that's a relatively new phenomenon, a new linkage, 21st century linkage. Trades between the two continents continues to grow. Between 2007 and 2012, EU imports from Africa increased by 46%. In 2012, the EU imported African goods worth euro 187 billion, i.e. less than 10% of total extra EU imports. African imports from the EU amounted to euro 152 billion. Throughout this time, the EU remained Africa's prime source of imports, 34%, as well as its main export market, 40% of African exports. In total, 37% of African trade took place with the EU in 2012. Very interesting, isn't it? Then discussing investment, EU accounting for 48% of FDI stocks, and then an interesting bit of data here. Direct investment stocks held by African investors in the EU have increased by more than 700% to reach euros 77 billion. That's interesting. It would be interesting to know what it is. I'm sure a lot of it is coming out of places like Portugal, out of Angola. Europe remains Africa's biggest development partner as well. Talking about the African Peace Facility, The EU has contributed more than 1.2 billion euros since 2004 to help finance many ongoing Africa-led peace support operations, AMISOM, MISCA, and a number of others. And it's a very interesting moment. I think relations have become very chippy, particularly here, and I think around the ICC, in essence. Quite an interesting development yesterday when the visa was apparently temporarily withheld, and the reaction that happened wasn't, speaks to the dysfunction in that relationship, I'm afraid. But when you look at the hard economics, the ties that bind them really material. Jose Manuel Barroso made an interesting speech as well. That's on Rich Wrap-Up if you care to have a look. I saw the full transcript of the final words from the cockpit of flight MH370 via South China Morning Post, and that plane's been missing since March 8. No wreckage of the plane has been recovered yet, and it's got a sort of geopolitical angle, hasn't it? I think both sides were exploring how much intelligence the other had, but for me, there is I'm not buying this current theory that it somehow flew in a straight line and ended up in a completely remote place in the Indian Ocean. The central government will boost defence spending by 12.2% this year. This is in China, and this is all about extending the reach of the Chinese Navy. To that end, King Abdullah issued Royal Decree 44, which criminalises those participating in hostilities outside the kingdom with prison sentences of between 3 and 20 years. Further regulations were issued by the Saudi Interior Ministry identifying a broad list of groups which the government considers to be terrorist organizations, including, of course, the Muslim Brotherhood. Article 1 of the new provisions defines terrorism as calling for atheist thought in any form or calling into question the fundamentals of the Islamic religion on which this country is based. So, atheists, watch out. The Muslim Brotherhood's new nerve centre, I couldn't resist this, as an article in The Guardian saying that Cricklewood, of all places, I think it's somewhere on the Piccadilly line, I never got there, but it was always at the end of it. The supposed Muslim Brotherhood base, and I'll put up a photograph from The Guardian, a NATO committee drafted plans for promoting stability in Eastern Europe in the current context by increasing military cooperation with Armenia, Azerbaijan and Moldova. This is all in Russia's near abroad, and that was the point I was making in my geopolitical musings, that it's not Putin who's parked up Obama's rear end, but it's Obama who's parked up Putin's rear end, essentially. I saw this photograph on Photo Booth, destroyed stone lanterns along the entrance path to one of the temples in Tomioka. It's pretty mesmerizing. Currency markets, Euro 138.06, dollar index 80.07. It's all about a weak yen, which is now at 103.84, and the dollar touched 103.94, which was the highest since January 23. More than an 8-week high. Swiss franc 0.88927, pound 166.28, Aussie 0.9236. The Indian rupee is now once more through 60, strengthened to 59.68 and touched 59.61, which was the highest since July, an 8-month high. South Korean won 10.57.11, the Rial 226.10. Egyptian pound 696.60, and the South African rand 10.58.24. If you're looking at the higher beta currencies, the rand, the Rial, South Korean won, the Indian rupee, the pound even, and the Aussie dollar, they're all pretty firm. But clearly, if we get strong data out of the US, and on balance, we've had some weak spots because of a very cold snap, but we are going to get some stronger rebound data, I think. Might not be this time round. The dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart of that. Still at this level, which I spoke about for a long time, 80.07 it is at. I was speaking about 80.15, I think. But it's sort of no man's land. It's difficult to see where it goes directionally at the moment. Euro dollar 138.06, good rebound after a very soft inflation number. I think people are looking through that number, thinking to themselves, it's going to start ticking higher. Dollar yen at an 8-9 week low, 103.84. The correlation between dollar yen and the Nikkei since Abenomics came onto the scene is intact until further notice, said a fellow called Callow to Bloomberg. Commodity markets, gold 1282.60. As I said previously, I think 2014 high has already been reached in the first quarter. Traded as low as 1277.79 yesterday, which was the lowest since February the 11th, so like a 7-week low. Crude oil back below 100 at 99.77. Really, you could just trade it all year whenever it pops above 100 and buy it when it comes back below. A little less rich Qatar gas dominance challenged. Blazing gas flares 70 meters high brighten the night sky above Qatar's Ras Laffan industrial city. The 295 square kilometer complex houses the world's largest assemblage of liquefied natural gas plants and the biggest port for LNG exports on the globe. Ras Laffan chills to a fluid more gas in a year than Canada consumes, and then ships it to run electric plants and warm homes from Tokyo to Buenos Aires. The gas facilities within its grounds produce almost a third of the world's LNG exports. And then saying, essentially now, the greatest threat to Qatar's enormous wealth is competition. Other nations are challenging its LNG dominance. Australia is constructing liquefaction plants that will more than triple its annual LNG manufacturing capacity to 85 million tons by 2018, surpassing Qatar. I'll put up a photograph of a ship loading up with liquid natural gas, of which Qatar is the world's biggest exporter. And bear in mind, the other big gas find, of course, is off Mozambique. Interesting post in the FT East African community, an investor magnet. 5 countries, 145 million people, annual GDP of $110 billion. EAC makes a tidy block, and while the news flow surrounding better-known African investor narratives such as those in South Africa, Nigeria and Ghana has turned cautious, there is mounting optimism when it comes to the EAC. It's been pushing physical integration through investment in infrastructure and making progress on reforms to legal and institutional frameworks to improve the business environment. Singularly, Kenya stands to gain the most from this interconnection, but as the nations of Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda and Burundi become increasingly intertwined, investors will be unable to ignore this new emerging market. EAC integration, saying that although achingly slow, is finally moving at a meaningful pace, reducing regulatory obstacles. Rwanda scrapped work permit fees for all EAC citizens. His shortage is human capital. He's seeking to attract it. Very smart. Freedom for capital movement is another EAC initiative. Physical linkages already in the works. These are the big, the railway project, etc. So quite a fulsome report talking about Kenya's proximity to Europe and Asia, efficient labour market, could soon make a bid as a manufacturing centre competing with South Africa for foreign plants. But there's still work to do, saying electricity is too expensive versus South African prices, but basically a very constructive article, and I agree with it, and that's why hopefully you'll be able to see what the Secretary General said pretty soon once we've got it uploaded. The South African All Share closed at a record high yesterday. It's up 5.05% in 2014. Dollar versus Rand were back near resistance, not yet breaking through it, probably looking to see what happens next. And I think a lot will hinge on that jobs number. Egyptian pound pretty much unchanged as it's been, but interesting developments. The central bank said it covered the entire backlog of dollars owed to foreign investors seeking to repatriate funds, but did not say how much money is involved, which is an interesting development. The Egyptian stock market bounced 1.47% yesterday after having a poor run. It's up 17.6% so far this year. The Nigerian all-share fell 0.94%, that's down 6.05%, but buy analysis shows it would be much lower but for Dangote Cement, which has had a great run. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 11.93%, but all those returns have been eroded by the SEDI. I like this map, which has ever wondered how big Africa is. Marriott is targeting 16 African nations following the Protea acquisition. Said it will continue expanding its chains in African markets following the acquisition of South Africa's Protea Hospitality Holdings. We have 25 Marriott brand hotels under construction in 7 countries in Africa that will come on stream over the next 4 years. New hotels are going to bring us into Benin, Gabon, Ghana, Ethiopia and Mauritius. And with existing hotels plus those in the pipeline and those Protea operates, we will be in 16 countries in Africa by 2017. Now coming to Kenya, Abu Bakr Sharif, also known as Makaburi, was killed as he left a court compound about 15 kilometers north of Mombasa. Police Chief for Kisauni area, Richard Ngatia, told journalists he had been attending a court hearing. Makaburi and another man were outside the court waiting to be picked up when another vehicle approached and the men were sprayed with bullets. He said both were killed. Our brother Abu Bakr Sharif Makaburi has left us. He is dead, a preacher at a mosque in Kisauni said through a loudspeaker. A report by the UN Monitoring Group on Somalia said Makaburi had an influential role in the Kenyan-based Islamist militant group Al-Hijra, suggesting he had called for attacks on a range of targets in Kenya. The group said Al-Hijra was working on behalf of Al-Shabaab. He became the central figure in terms of Al-Hijra, in terms of the operations, in terms of relations with Al-Shabaab, said one Western diplomat of him. Makaburi has become the most high-profile Islamist activist in Kenya after the killing of Islamist cleric Abu Drogo in August 2012. I know I will be killed, Makaburi had told Reuters in October, saying the police would seek ways to justify shooting him. I'm ready to die for it. If they want to, or if they don't, they will give me martyrdom. I'll put up a photograph of him taken on October the 3rd, 2013, speaking to journalists, and then a photograph of him dead, which I found earlier this morning. There's a documentary NTV did, and if you jump, the link is there, listen to Makaburi, I think I put on Rich Wrap-Ups. If you jump to 18 minutes, and he's being asked about martyrdom, he says, I long for it. And it's in that interview he justifies the Westgate attack as well. So you can see he must have been high on several people's radar. Washington Post has a report on this as well, and saying the killing by unknown gunmen came as the Kenyan government announced it had begun an operation to stop a wave of attacks in the country, as authorities arrested more than 650 people in Nairobi following a bomb attack Monday. So 650 is a pretty big number. Ahmed's death is the latest to hit the Masjid Shuhada Mosque, which officials call an incubator of terrorism. Sheikh Abu Drogo Mohammed, a friend of Ahmed's, was assassinated in August 2012. A year later, another mosque leader was killed. There have been no arrests in either case. I'm living on borrowed time. The same guy who ordered Abu Drogo's death is going to order mine, he'd said. Matt Bryden, who I know, said Ahmed had clear links with Al-Shabaab, saying Ahmed's death may cause the militant group to plan retaliatory attacks against Kenya. That's the issue. That just ends up being a cycle. I mean, tourism is already on its knees. Murithi said Ahmed's last interview with a local TV station in which he appeared to justify the killing of civilians. And I think that's referring to the link I put up above it. During the September terrorist attack on these upscale mall in Nairobi may have contributed to his death. I'll put up a photograph of the Likoni ferry that I took, and as I sat on that ferry, I wrote this: as I sat on the Likoni ferry deep in the milieu of the overwhelming tide of humanity, because you get on in the car and then all the pedestrians come on. It's like 3,000 of them in the space of a few minutes. and I don't know what security precautions are being taken. The old is dying and the new cannot be born. In this interregnum there arises a great diversity of morbid symptoms. I suppose post-Westgate I notice how often in a day I am at a standstill, and that the density of humanity around me means I am in fact helpless. Whether it's the Likoni ferry or crawling at 2 miles an hour around the Likoni environs or stuck in a jam or Waiaki Way. These are asymmetric sweet spots, as it were. I follow trends, the trend is your friend, and whether it was the Ibrahim Index which noted at the subcategory level no region in Africa has improved in rule of law, or critically personal safety since 2000, or the World Economic Forum report of September 2013, which ranked us 125th with regard to the security situation and characterized it as worrisome, or a report on Bloomberg which said that between January and November 2013, violent offences including murder, robbery and rape surged between 11 and 22%. All the security indicators are heading in the wrong direction. And I was worried that, once the genie escapes the bottle, it will be practically impossible to bottle it again. Put up a photograph of Westgate, another one of Mombasa Island I took at sunset on Boxing Day. And I wrote on the September the 3rd, 2012, the Swahili coast is a potential Tinderbox from Lamu through Zanzibar and all points in between. That was September the 3rd, 2012. And I was saying that, the week before last, we had driven through Savo West, exited the park deep near the Tanzanian border, driven to Diani and thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. In fact, the phrase Halison Days, a period of calm, often nostalgic, Halison Days of yore, Halison Days of youth, best described that week. We saw elephants in the morning, and in the evening we were walking barefoot on the beach. I met a fellow named Volko who told me that if I came back in February, he would take me swimming with the whale sharks. And I thought to myself, this is a blessed place if we marketed it right. The whole world would want to come. Then last week, on the 27th of August, Abu Rogo Mohammed was shot on the always busy Bamburi Road, not far from Pirates. This proved the spark that ignited a tinderbox, and I watched events unfold with trepidation. We now exist in a 24/7 always-on world. For a moment it looked like Mombasa was morphing into Waziristan, and a tsunami of travel advisories would be winging their way through the air. My concern remains that what appear like uncorrelated spikes and paroxysms of violence conflate, become more broad-based and amplify. We need to craft a roadmap that effects economic trickle-down, because whilst all our eyes were turned towards the Rift Valley, the Pwani has been simmering. It needs our full attention. Mumias Sugar Company CEO Peter Kibati has been suspended to pave the way for investigations into claims of dumping of cheap imports. I'll put up a link. You can have a look at the share price data around Mumias. Kenya Airways surged 4% on Tuesday as investors reacted to the start of operations of the low-cost carrier Jambo Jet and the imminent arrival of the Dreamliner. Afrexim Bank says it's in its second phase of a $1.9 billion Kenya Airways financing. It was in the second phase, providing funding for 10 Boeing aircraft as Kenya Airways ramps up its fleet. I'll put a link for Kenya Airways' share price and a link to the Mindspeak session with Dr. Titus Naikuni. Porsche has opened its doors in Kenya, according to a tweet I saw. Java and Subway eye middle-class cash with new city outlets. Kenya shilling unchanged, hasn't moved. The Nairobi All Shares up 5.203% this year and just 0.84% below a record high set last month. The NSE 20 is up 2.44% this year. Yesterday the All Share edged marginally lower, and incredibly Kenya Orchards leapt 53.33%, which was quite an extraordinary. It hadn't traded for about 5 years, and suddenly, it's all a question of its market cap is $687,000, and I'm sure it's an attractive vehicle to reverse into for somebody. Safaricom unchanged at 12.35. They're not going to accept that condition that the CAK is set. I'm expecting a very strong result out of them. Kenya Airways up 4%, KCB unchanged. CIC was a big gainer. That is up over 40% so far this year. And of course, then the ARM shaved off 0.55% as the market reacted to the release of its full year results. Basically, margin compression at ARM near term. All about clinker. Once their clinker comes online, the margin expands a great deal. So, you just take that on trust. Once again, thank you for stopping by, and I am grateful.